it can appear to show up as beams. Those are the fingers of the plasma, dots, different spot colors in the sky. It can look like lightning, but it should not have sound until the main event with the plasma arcing.
You've said that this plasma is sentient. Basically, it could be thought of as like inspirited or spirit itself. So when it spills in, it does cause things to animate.
Yeah.
Like inanimate objects coming to life. This is another huge motif. Toy Story, Batteries Not Included, all these old movies and stuff where inanimate things come to life. This would be part of that, as is the zombie motif. Because if you have dead bodies, they would seem alive. Now, I'm not saying they are alive, but they move in a way that looks like life. And this would be a cultural memory from the chaos and shock of all this stuff. But as for when it happens, you're right that although no one has ever known exactly the year the reset happens, as the intervals between resets may or may not fluctuate anyway, and our timekeeping has been less than perfect over the centuries too, we do have omens that let us know that the time is near. When we see these signs, we know it is time to start getting ready for what is to come. The following is a short list of only some of the major signs which will precede the main event. Sounds in the sky, people do report those. Shorter days and years. Sexual confusion. I've heard that's a thing these days. But you say that's because the electromagnetic energy begins to shift and humanity starts to reflect that in the male and female polarities shifting too. If you think of positive and negative polarities of a magnet as male and female, well, there's a lot of shifting energy. It's not as polarized as it was before. And this symbolically is represented in people's sexuality. I think that's kind of creative. But you also mention war, which happens because humans are so frustrated and energetically primed. Maybe also as a further distraction and more chaos caused by the elite. Who has time to prepare for the cosmic event when we're all out on the battlefield while they sit in their towers and retreat underground? Whoops, sorry, gotta go. Don't care too much about Israel at this point. And then also mysterious lights in the sky as plasmas start to activate, and migration from the Tropic of Capricorn, and worldly unrest. Well, I mean, that's a hell of a list, but it's good that none of that is going on these days, isn't it? Clearly, we're not anywhere near a plasma event, because where are these signs? Obviously, I'm being facetious, because they're all over the fucking place.
Like everywhere, all of the signs. The world's in flux. You can see it from the animal kingdom to the humans.
So how long do these omens appear before an event? Like, in your mind, do you think 5 years or 50 years? Sometimes it's hard to even adjust between a human lifespan and a cosmic scale.
I'd look at it. I think that the Bible gave the best analogy in that it's like a pregnant woman that's going to give birth. You know, how do people today accurately predict when the woman is likely to give birth? They never come out and say, rarely, well, you're going to give birth on December 21st of next year or whatever. But they can say you're likely to give birth within this time frame based on your contractions and the symptoms that I'm seeing coming from you. Because women give birth, some go 9 months, some go more, some go less. And the earth is Mother Earth, and she's going to give birth. That's what the apocalypse is an opening up. This is a cosmic wedding. This is a mixing of the sky god and Mother Earth together, and all of their fluids and all. It's very sexual. That's where all the sexual stuff comes from, that people only really see it as a base physical sexual act that's being replicated by, people symbolically or whatever. But it's a cosmic mixing that's happening, and the earth gives birth to the light of the world, the light that illuminates the world, and the light in the world, and the light spectrum in our world actually changes and shifts, leading us into better times, leading us into a world that's energetically charged. And because it's energetically charged, we are also energetically charged. Sleep is the thing of the past. People don't need to sleep anymore because the only reason we sleep is to recharge ourselves. But if you're already constantly charged all of the time, then people will suddenly survivors at least will suddenly realize maybe worrying a bit, like, I'm not getting any sleep. My mind is just super awake and I've got all this energy, etc. Well, that's good because, and that's all, honestly, that's how I've talked to a lot of people who are, truth seekers and on similar paths. And we all have similar symptoms. And that's one of them, that it's very difficult to get sleep, or that they find that when they try to go to sleep, their minds are so awake. So they have to do something to ground themselves. Eating food is another thing too. Being consumers and just constantly having to put things into our body. The reason we do that is to get energy. And it's a strange concept. Love, Death, and Robots did a really good episode where they had robots in the apocalypse, or after the apocalypse, just kind of walking through the rubble and debris and saw all these dead human bodies, and they're taking pictures and they're like tourists, and they're like, what I heard humans used to do to get energy? They would put other life forms into their face, and then they would crunch it up with these rocks in their face, and then they would put it down these tubes, and it would go into a vat of acid, and then it would redistribute all the energy into. And it's like, wow, that sounds way more complicated than just charging yourself or plugging in or whatever, right? But we're like those robots. We become like those robots in the world to come when we're just constantly energetically charged. You know what I mean? The Earth releases that charge and shares it with us up here on the surface. So many different things change, and because of that energy and that new charge, there's it's a new charge. You know how say somebody is in charge, so they're in power. It's the same thing. There's a change of power. There's a shift in power. There's a different charge, or there's a different frequency that is in charge of the world. Right now, we have a lack, or a negative, or a satanic charge. You could say a lack of energy. When the energy returns and the terrestrial energy fills the atmosphere, then the charge is different, and there is a goodness, and there is a frequency that brings life to things. So it will bring life to what we consider to be inanimate objects or the dead. Cars just spark up on their own. Things with motors, robots, mechanical things, computers, all come to life because they're filled and imbued with energy that's ambient in the atmosphere itself. This happened during the Carrington event. Whenever we had the Carrington event and all the electricity filled the atmosphere, the people that were using the telegraph machines at the time unplugged them to turn them off because they were getting shocked by the telegraph machines, or attacked, you could say, by the telegraph machines. And they unplugged them to turn off, but that didn't work because there's so much energy ambient in the air that they didn't need to be plugged in. They were just alive. You know what I mean? They were alive all on their own.
Wow.
And this is also shown to us in, since we mentioned The Color Out of Space, there's a scene where there's this guy doing a water survey, and he's out there camping or whatever by himself, and he hears the sound or whatever, and then all of a sudden the radio turns on by itself, and it's kind of spooky, and he goes to investigate, and then he turns around and this car just turns on by itself, and the lights turn on, and the car starts revving all by itself. And it's not explained in the movie, which I love, because to me that's a riddle, and I know there's a purpose behind it and there's a reason behind it. If it was any other movie, that would have been a ghost. They would just be like, oh, it's a ghost or whatever. And it's the same reason why when Jason Voorhees walks around as a zombie who's electrically amplified or energetically amplified, whenever he's nearby, all the lights start to flicker, and it messes with the electromagnetic spectrum, and that electricity, that energy goes into bodies, which is what spirit wants to do. When it's in this world is designed to be experienced by vessels or within vessels, right? This is how, like, if I go down into the ocean, I need to be in the proper vessel to survive in that atmosphere. You know what I mean? So spirit or plasma or electromagnetic energy, when it's in this world under this pressure and how this world is in this particular location, it needs a vessel in order to be a part of things, in order to experience things. Otherwise, it's seen as being a ghost. But in that movie, everything's turning on. The cars is a huge trope throughout all pop culture of, the obvious is the Disney movie or Pixar Cars, right? Where the cars are just alive. They come to life by themselves. There was a movie that was made about all the cars on Earth just turning on and murdering everybody and trying to run people over and stuff. Maximum Overdrive, which is classic 80s movies. But all the electronics, they turn on. And this is like the Terminator concept, the Skynet. And that's why they call it Skynet, because it's plasma up there in the sky that's spread out like a net. And it brings all of these things to life, all the machines, the robots. And it begs the question, if there are elite, if let's say I'm correct, and let's say that I just tapped into this knowledge, whereas the elite have passed it on and they have learned it from their forefathers or their relatives, right? So if they know what I have tapped into, and maybe even more, then it's possible that they're setting infrastructure up to prepare for that and accommodate it so that they can use it in the world to come. You know what I mean? From buildings to architecture to underground facilities, or even towers, different types of towers that they're setting up to transfer and send information to each other.
Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right. The Higherside Chat Show.